And welcome everybody to another glorious episode of the Put On Waivers Podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, and I am podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. A little heat today. Got a little heat today, man. It was, good 75, hot out here, People complaining how hot it is because we have so many problems out here because it's so hot. They can't deal. I'm sure other places would love the heat that we have out here. My partner is James Amato, always keeps his hat game tight. Last week it was Cal Bears, and now this week it's the first place, underdog, a National League team, the Milwaukee Brewers out here. James, how you doing today?
Doing good, and one of the best emblems ever to come out of the 80s.
It is. Bob Uecker would be proud of that.
And the 70s when they put this uniform combo together. So it was just a great logo, and I'm so glad they brought it back a few years ago for good.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a real good one. So we have a lot to talk about today. Let's start off with a little. Let's start off with actual what's on the court. Right now, currently, this is East Coast West Coast time. It's hard to get get our time together, so we actually are doing this podcast during the NBA Finals. So Game 6 is being played right now. Hopefully the Bucks in 6. RTPOW podcast is my Twitter handle. James is JR_Amato 824. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. YouTube as well. The NV, Northern Virginia Raiders Booster Club. Being here last week, the 21st. Myrtle Beach, be there or don't. You're crazy if you don't go. If you have an opportunity to go, Myrtle Beach is beautiful in the summertime, so you can check that out as well. Vista, thank you for folks listening in Vista, California, Albuquerque, New Mexico, East Hartford, Connecticut, Goss, Fourth, England. Maybe that was Ted Lasso listening to that one. Listen to the show. Anchorage, Alaska, Oakland, California, who are on the verge of losing their baseball team as of last night's vote. And Fredericksburg, Virginia, 858-429-94 is the text line as well. We got like 4 or 5 questions off that text line. But let's start on the court. And one of the reasons why I love the Bucks in this series and I want the Bucks to win this series is obviously I love Giannis. He didn't go chasing. He stayed. They got a good team around him. And I think I want to see a little bit more of the return of the big man. I want to see the return of points in the paint. I want to see, guys who, play good defense. He's a defensive player of the year, run the floor, and be able to come down. I mean, the way they ended the game with the alley-oop from Drew Holiday to him was emphatic, if you will. So we were thoughts about Giannis. And, I mean, if they are able to win this game, this is going to be like a little bit of a kind of kickback a little bit on the 3-point game. I mean, they has a couple of 3-point shooters, but this is a team who wants to pound the ball inside. And I give them credit for being able to change the series by putting Holiday on Paul. It kind of changed the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great series. It's actually been throwback basketball, if you think about it. Passing the ball a lot. All the players are involved. Kind of prove that, you don't need big 3 superstars. You can have one superstar and some very, very good superstar players. I mean, Brook Lopez in the middle. Brook Lopez has really impressed in these playoffs, if you ask me, what he's done. And, obviously, you got to take the Nets injuries into this and what's happening, but seize the moment, and they're doing it. But how, outside of a Suns fan, how do you root against Giannis? I mean, he's just class. Yeah. Everything he says is just pure class on and off the court.
Yeah, and unless you're listening to Undisputed, where they just can't stand him. I mean, you would think that this is like the worst team you ever seen in your life. Like Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday are like scrubs that they took off the street. But those guys are really good complementary players. I kind of like
Is that Skip Bayless Undisputed?
It's not Skip Bayless Undisputed. And also, I was surprised at how much Chris Broussard himself, who was a pretty good, been a pretty good NBA reporter for years. Just obviously doesn't like Giannis, and just anytime he can take a shot at this backcourt, which, let's be honest, the backcourt of Holiday and Middleton has completely outplayed Paul and Booker. Booker's been good, but Paul has not been really good, and that's been a big issue for the Bucks in this series.
Yeah, it's Chris Paul is kind of if you're a Chris Paul fan or not,
Were we expecting too much out of Chris Paul?
I think we were, and I think that's why we talked about it last week. I think too many people were jumping on the gun to throw max contracts at this guy when he becomes a free agent.
Well, that'd be nuts.
That'd be nuts. $40
million.
Yeah, let him re-sign with Phoenix. I mean, the Knicks need to avoid him at all costs, and he's going to become the first player if they lose this series to lose. He'll have lost 4 times in the playoffs on a team that had a 2-0 lead, which back in the day, a 2-0 lead in the NBA was
death sentence.
It was. You just weren't coming back from that.
Yeah, no question about it.
Yeah, so it's amazing. And the person who he's tied with 3 is his former teammate Blake Griffin. So
Blake Griffin.
So their Clipper days, they were both up 2-0 in series and lost the series.
And Blake did it this year too, because weren't they up 2-0 on the Bucks this time?
No, right? No, they split.
The Nets. The Nets. I thought the Nets, when they won that series, they were up 2-0. Well, it could have been split. I don't remember.
I think it was split the first 2 games.
2 games, yeah. But like I said, they're up by 4 right now in the first quarter. But like I said, if they're able to do it, you can see like this whole thing. I mean, let's think about it. If you have the Bucks winning it, and then you have let's just say the Brewers won the World Series. Are we gonna remember about Rodgers and when football season comes around? Like we're gonna say Aaron Rodgers.
No. Yeah. He should be the big story of the summer Green Bay. Wisconsin, isn't near Milwaukee, but yeah, I mean, there was a time, I don't know if you remember this, there was a time where the Packers played 2 to 4 games a year at in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
They had to play all their games in Green Bay, but yeah, he should be the big story, but the Bucks have it right now, and they'll carry the next week or so. Obviously, you have the fast closing drafts coming up and free agency after the finals, but then you have the Brewers are doing their thing, and all the flash and attention is in the National League West, and I think that's why they're so not talked about, the Brewers.
Including us last week. So we're guilty. I'm guilty as charged on that one. For the Suns are able to, do you believe that the winner, and this happens a lot, do you believe that the winner of this game tonight wins the series? Obviously the Bucks win this game tonight, they win the series. Do you feel like if the Suns win this game, the Bucks are behind the 8 ball, blowing an opportunity to close out?
No, I mean, Mark Messier has often said the hardest game to win is the clinching game.
Yeah.
And we've seen that a lot where teams are up 3-1 and it gets tied 3-3, but coming back from that is almost impossible. I think the Bucks just had such an impressive win in Phoenix. I think they ripped a piece of their heart out in that game.
Yeah.
The Suns had an early big lead, and the Bucks came back, and just the emphasis on how the game ended. That slam is. It was like a stake through their heart.
I think the thing about it too is like you have to understand, like when you're Devin Booker in that spot, just take the pull-up jump shot, because that's the game winning. Every iconic, but with the exception of the hook by Magic, has been a pull-up jump shot. Like you have to just take that jump shot at the foul line and just take that shot. I'm not sure where he was trying to get to. He tried to get closer and closer to the basket. They collapsed on him. He had nowhere to go. And next thing you know, the ball's going the other way. So tough play there. And the free throws were an issue for the Bucks. So if this game is close, obviously Milwaukee may not make theirs, and the Suns do make theirs. So that could be an issue. But if the Bucks win, great. If not, then we'll be talking about about the game next week as far as Game 7, as far as that goes. You brought an interesting story to me, and it's a lot of different places now about the perks of playing for the Nets. My goodness. Thoughts about the Nets and that whole situation where basically not only are they getting paid big checks, but they don't have to even put out any of their money for any of the property that that they had to move to Jersey and stuff like that too. I mean, they were giving marginal players big time deals off the
Marginal
court.
players paying for houses and vacations for their wives and their girlfriends and their other girlfriends. Crazy story. I think though, I think there's it's circumventing the cap, obviously, because it's money the teams aren't reporting. But I do think we're going to come into a situation that we've come into, whether it's the Patriots or it's the Houston Astros. Every team does it. It just takes that one team to get caught. Even with the pitchers in baseball, with the stick'em. I think that's what we're seeing with this, is that they're the first team called out for doing it, but it's going to be one of those things where the league is going to have to investigate, and it's going to open up a can of worms. Where I think a lot of teams are circumventing the cap this way.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be the league's going to get rid of this, because I think this is something that teams feel like the LA teams might do. So so anything that goes on with the Lakers or the Clippers, they make sure they're very mindful of that. Of that in the league, to make sure that they don't get, especially when the Lakers were really, really going through it, they don't get an unfair advantage with some of these free agents. And I think that, for the Nets to do it, it just goes on. And like they have, even with stories like this, they just end up becoming, right, the most hated team in basketball. Like they just are.
It's the first team that gets caught that, everyone points fingers at, but don't be surprised if it comes out other teams have been doing this. And again, you're looking at unreported income on the players, so once the government sees money being handed out that they're not getting taxes paid on, it can open up a whole big can of worms for the league. So, and it's, how these states that, how do you beat the tax-free states to sign players? Is this the way of doing it? Throwing that money around. And apparently, like what this spy is saying, or what's coming out of it, is like they had to rip up their budget every single week. With the money they were spending on other stuff.
Yeah. So in a situation where you probably thought, wow, the Nets are killing it. They got the fans back in the stadium. They're finally making money. They're probably losing money because they got to pay for so-and-so's girlfriend or fiance or whatever. They got to make sure she's taken care of, and every week they got to come up with more money all the time. So
these are those small margins that the owners report that they only make owning a team. Yes. We know they make a lot more money than that. Yes. So they're not fooling anyone.
You spoke about the government and getting involved as far as like taxes goes. My father always said, listen, you could do a lot in life, man. Don't play games with Uncle Sam. He don't want okay. Don't play games with Uncle Sam. They're gonna find that money.
Well, they're talking about Pete Alonso winning the home run derby. What do you win $1 million for that?
Something like that,
right? So that he has to report that as income in Denver, Colorado.
Yes, tax-free state
in the state of Colorado, and then he has to report it in New York.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated.
And then whatever state he lives in, he has to report that as income. So it's it's just crazy, like how this happened in sports, and this is actually relatively new in sports. I think it's like the last 30 to 40 years. Boomer Esiason talks about it a lot. I think it was towards the end of his career where the state started realizing, hey, these guys are making all this money in my state. And that's another reason too why teams, the American League used to report amount of people at a game, and the National League used to report ticket sales or vice versa for attendance. And then once the government started getting their hand on that, then both leagues just switched to actual amount of people in the stands and not the actual amount of tickets sold as attendance.
Yeah. So it's something else. I mean, it makes it kind of funny when you look at the tax part of it. When you say to yourself, hey, you're like, I think they have like entertainment tax or something like that in some of these states. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see how that kind of goes through it. But as far as the Nets being the villain of the NBA, people don't really love Garnett. People don't really love Harden. Don't really love Kyrie Irving, of course. I mean, he's probably the number one people everybody's like one of the most hated players on the list as far as that goes. It's really a tough situation for them. They seem like they have the team built, but every year, like these teams get older and older. Like Garnett another year, Kyrie another year. Like I'm not sure, like how does that work going forward? Because like it seems like how do you know that like if you're Garnett that Kyrie is committed? Like how do you say to yourself?
I think you mean Durant, right?
I mean Durant, yeah. Sorry,
Garnett was a few years ago.
What did I say? Garnett. Oh yeah, Garnett. No, sorry.
Well, he was a net. He's not an all-time great net.
Yes, he was. Yes. All-time great Celtic, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's just like how these
Durant.
players.
I'm sorry, Durant. I meant
how these players have been breaking down over the years. And again, I'm still going to relay this all back to the time off they take during the season. The games rested where you go from playing 3 games in 2 weeks to all of a sudden playing 3 games in 7 days. Your body's just not ready for it. And I wouldn't be shocked if, they'd run practice at half speed. I'm sure NBA practice and NBA, Players Association got as involved as the NFL Players Association when it comes to practice, like how many times you can practice in a day and everything. So, it's interesting, but yeah, especially those 3, and Harden didn't have the best off season taking care of himself. I know, there was the fat suit thing that came out, but even when he did, not wearing the fat suit, he still didn't look in the best shape.
Did not, and that was just clowning another organization. I wouldn't have traded him just for the fat suit. To be honest with you, I would just kept him on the team for the whole year. It wasn't really no reason to do that.
And I mean, and they're going to hit cap issues. They have a couple of free agents coming up, who a team can go out and offer one of these guys a max. These restricted free agents, it can kind of blow up the Nets roster if the Nets really, they need these guys because they can't rely on. Well, you can't rely on Kyrie because he just may not want to play one day.
Yeah.
So you have to keep some of these players. So, I think it's, they're getting older. And then Durant obviously goes on to play USA basketball. He's in the Olympics next week. So, just more wear and tear on him. It's going to be an interesting year for the Nets next year. Can they have that regular season and then just, fall apart in the playoffs with injuries again?
Yeah, no question about it.